Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Cerebral Book Chat, Junior Edition. I thought that it might be wonderful to talk about a book that means so much to so many people, especially now when everybody, is having some issues maybe with their life or economics or anything. And I thought this was such a hopeful book for me. And so I hope this book brings hope for you because it's such a wonderful metaphor about life and how life can get better, so much better. If you think about Haryy and he's like in that godforsaken cupboard, and that was not that much different than my life. And then all of a sudden he gets rescued and then ends up having this other life. And I just thought, what a beautiful thing that was. Of course, sometimes you have to rescue yourself, which I did. Although, of course, I had help for sure. But not only that, absolutely love the first book and just find it just so extraordinary. And the first movie as well. So I've happened across this book that's very illustrated, right? If you're somebody that likes an illustrated kind of coffee table maybe book. There's another one that's like too heavy to lift. There's somebody that made, I think, 3 of them, and they do have a lot of artwork, but they are so heavy, and I don't like the artist's work. I don't like it. But I happened across this one. Boom. Haryy Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, because that's what it's called. I know they call it something else in the US, but it's really the Philosopher's Stone in Canada and the UK and Australia. And so that's the book. You can buy a version, though, of this book that says Sorcerer's Stone if you want. And I mean, it does make sense, I guess, because they kind of are sorcerers, or though they call themselves wizards, so maybe it's different. And of course, women are called witches, which isn't the best name. We could get a better name, maybe. But it's really good. See the back? It's got really good, and it's so beautifully done. Especially if you are a book collector, as I am. So what I wanted to do, as I get the day off today, is talk about this beautiful book. And how extraordinary it is. Like back in the day, they had, they still kind of do, but they used to have bookbinders that people would actually make these books by hand because books were so precious back then and sacred. They aren't really now because it's so easy to make them, but there are people who are trying to revive this lost art of making very powerfully beautiful and amazing, extraordinary books. Not like pulp books that you can buy very cheaply, but very beautiful books that used to be, let's say, in very famous people's libraries or wealthy people's libraries or whatever, right? That weren't just sort of paperbacks or whatever. So this is a hardcover, very well done, very well made. And so I wanted to read you, maybe I won't if it's too long, but one of my favorite chapters of this book, because I'm thinking about it again, just how much hope this book gave me, how amazing this book was for me. So that's what it looks like there. Can you see that? I'm kind of sitting on my armchair here, and I've got my iPad there. So hopefully you can. Right there it is. And it's done by these 2 people. It's called Mina Lima. And it's a Bloomsbury's children's book. So I think it's British. Actually, I think it's a British book. And again, way back in 1997. For those of you that can remember. And I think the movie came out in around 2000, if I remember rightly. Diagon Alley is literally one of my favorite chapters because I feel like I feel like what Haryy would feel in some ways. I've had moments like that, too few moments like that. but where it's just this extraordinary experience, and you've just had such an awful time and an awful nightmare, and somehow you're just plucked out of it. And then you're just saved, you know? And I think it's just such a beautiful thing and something to think about as so much is happening in the world right now. A positive thing that everything is going to just get better, man. It's going to turn out well, and I'm putting it out there that it will. So I wanted to talk about one of my favorite chapters and just how beautiful it is and how much it comforted me. So that's what we're going to do. And the interesting thing what they did is they totally changed all of the drawings. The drawings are reflective of the book, obviously, but not the movies. So they went a whole other way with what the people looked like and what everything looked like. But I still think it's beautiful. So tell me what you think. So this is 5, Diagon Alley. And I'm pretty happy with it. It's kind of a unique way of looking at it. So I thought we'd try and read this. See if we can read this whole chapter. Might be a little bit longer, but we're going to try. Harry woke early the next morning. Although he could tell it was daylight, he kept his eyes shut. It was a dream, he told himself firmly. I dreamed a giant Hagrid came to tell me I was going to go to a school for wizards. When I open my eyes, I'll be back at home in my cupboard. Have you ever had that? Maybe you have. Suddenly, it was a loud tapping noise. And there's Aunt Petunia knocking at the door. Harry thought, his heart sinking. But he didn't open his eyes. It had been such a good dream. Tap, to tap, tap, tap. All right, Harry mumbled. I'm getting up. He sat up, and Hagrid's heavy coat fell off of him. The hut was full of sunlight. The storm was over. Hagrid himself was asleep on the collapsed sofa, and there was an owl rapping its claws on the window, a newspaper held in its beak. Harry scrambled to his feet, so happy he felt as though a large balloon was swelling inside him. He went straight to the window and jerked it open. The owl swooped in and dropped the newspaper on top of Hagrid, who didn't wake up. The owl then fluttered onto the floor and began to attack Hagrid's coat. Don't do that. Harry tried to wave the owl out of the way, but it snapped its beak fiercely at him and carried on savaging the coat. Hagrid, said Harry loudly, there's an owl. Pam. Hagrid grunted into the sofa. What? He wants paying for delivering the paper. Look in the pockets. Hagrid's coat seemed to be made of nothing but pockets. Bunches of keys, slug pellets, balls of string, mint humbugs, tea bags. Finally, Harry pulled out a handful of strange-looking coins. Give him 5 nuts, Hagrid said sleepily. Nuts? The little bronze ones. Harry counted out 5 little bronze coins, and the owl held out its legs so he could put the money into a small leather pouch tied to it. Then it flew off through the open window. Hagrid, he yawned loudly, sat up and stressed. Best be off, Harry. Lots to do today. Got to get up to London and buy all your stuff for school. Harry was turning over the wizard coins and looking at them. He had just thought of something which made him feel as though the happy balloon inside him had got a puncture. Hagrid? Said Hagrid, who was putting on his huge boots. I haven't got any money, and you heard Uncle Vernon last night. He won't pay for me to go and learn magic. Don't worry about that, said Hagrid, standing up, scratching his head. Did you think your parents didn't leave you anything? But if their house was destroyed, they didn't keep their gold in the house, boy. Nah, first stop for us is Gringotts. Wizard's Bank. Have a sausage. They're not bad cold, and I wouldn't say no to a bit of birthday cake neither. Wizards have banks? Just the one. Gringotts, run by goblins. Harry dropped the bit of sausage he was holding. Goblins? Yeah, so you'd be mad to try and rob it. I tell you that. Never mess with goblins, Harry. Gringotts is the safest place in the world for anything you want to keep safe, except maybe Hogwarts. As a matter of fact, I gotta visit Hogwarts and Gringotts anyway. Well, and Hogwarts. For Dumbledore, Hogwarts business. Hagrid drew himself up proudly. He usually gets me to do important stuff for him. Fetching getting things from Gringotts. He knows he can trust me, see. There you go. That's a picture. Okay. Let's see. Got everything? Come on, then. Harry followed Hagrid out to the rock. The sky was quite clear now, and the sea gleamed in the sunlight. The boat Uncle Vernon had hired was still there, and with lots of water in the bottom after the storm. How did you get here? Harry asked, looking around for another boat. Flew, said Hagrid. Flew? Yeah, but we'll go back in this. Not supposed to use magic now. I've gotcha. They settled down in the boat, Harry still staring at Hagrid, trying to imagine him flying. Seems a shame to row, though, said Hagrid, giving Harry another look, sideways. If I was to speed things up a bit, would your mind not mention it at Hogwarts? Of course not, Harry said, eager to see more magic. Hagrid pulled out the pink umbrella again, tapped it twice on the side of the boat, and they sped across towards land. Why would you be mad to try and rob Gringotts? Harry asked. Spells. Enchantments, said Hagrid, unfolding his newspaper as he spoke. They say there's dragons guarding a high-security vaults. And then you gotta find your way. Gringotts is hundreds of miles under London, see? Deep underground. You'd die of hunger trying to get out, even if you did manage to get your hands on something. Harry sat and thought about this while Hagrid read his newspaper, the Daily Prophet. Harry had learnt from Uncle Vernon that people liked to be left alone when they did this. But it was very difficult. He'd never had so many questions in his life. Ministry of Magic messing things up as usual, Hagrid muttered, turning the page. There's a Ministry of Magic? Harry asked before he could stop himself. Of course, said Hagrid. They wanted Dumbledore for minister, of course, but he'd never leave Hogwarts. So old Cornelius Fudge got the job. Bungler, if ever there was one. So he'd pelts Dumbledore with owls every morning, asking for advice. But what does a Ministry of Magic do? Well, their main job is to keep it from the muggles that there's still witches and wizards up and down the country. Why? Why? Blimey, Harry, everybody'd be wanting magic solutions to their problems. Nah, we're best left alone. At this moment, the boat bumped gently into the harbor wall. Hagrid folded up his newspaper and clambered above the stone steps onto the street. Passers-by stared a lot at Hagrid as they walked through the little town to the station. Harry couldn't blame them. Not only was Hagrid twice as tall as everyone else, he kept pointing at perfectly ordinary things, like parking meters, and saying loudly, See that, Harry? Things these muggles dream up, eh? Hagrid, said Harry, panting a bit as he ran to keep up. Did you say there were dragons at Gringotts? Well, so they say, said Hagrid. Crikey, I'd like a dragon. You'd like one? Ever wanted one ever since I was a kid. Here we go. They reached their station. There was a train to London in 5 minutes' time. Hagrid, who didn't understand muggle money, as he called it, gave the notes to Harry so he could buy their tickets. People stared more than ever on the train. Hagrid took up 2 seats and sat knitting what looked like a canary yellow circus tent. Still got your letter, Harry? He said as he counted stitches. Harry took the parchment envelope out of his pocket. Good, said Hagrid. There's a list there, everything you need. Harry unfolded the second piece of paper. He hadn't noticed the night before. Let's have a look at this picture, because they are in this kind of subway station, right? That's kind of where they are. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Uniform. First-year students will require 3 sets of plain work robes, black. 1 plain pointed hat, black for day wear. 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon hide or similar. 1 winter cloak, black silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothes should carry name tags. Set books. All students should have a copy of each of the following. The Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, by Miranda Goshawk. A History of Magic, by Bathilda Bagshot. Magical Theory, by Adalbert Waffling. A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, by Emmerich Switch. 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi, by Philida Spore. Magical Draughts and Potions, by Arsenius Jigger. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, by Newt Scamander. The Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Protection, by Quentin Trimble. Other equipment: 1 wand, 1 cauldron, pewter standard size 2, 1 set glass or crystal phials, 1 telescope, 1 set brass scales. Students may also bring an owl or a cat or a toad. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomsticks. But I do believe that Harry did get one because he was learning how to fly. Okay, so, oh, hang on. There's a big one here. Can we buy all of this in London? Harry wondered aloud. If you know where to go, said Hagrid. Harry had never been to London before. Although Hagrid seemed to know where he was going, he was obviously not used to getting there in an ordinary way. He got stuck in the ticket barrier on the underground and complained loudly that the seats were too small and the trains were too slow. I don't know how muggles imagine. How do they manage without magic? He said as they climbed a broken-down escalator, which led up to a bustling road lined with shops. Hagrid was so huge that he parted the clouds easily. All Harry had to do was keep close behind him. They passed bookshops and music stores and hamburger bars and cinemas, but nowhere that looked as if it would sell you a magic wand. There was an ordinary street full of ordinary people. Could there really be piles of wizard gold buried miles beneath them? Were there really shops that sold spell books and broomsticks? Might this all just be some huge joke that the Dursleys had cooked up? If Harry hadn't known that the Dursleys had no sense of humor, he might have thought it so. Yet somehow, even though everything Hagrid had told him so far was unbelievable, Harry couldn't help trusting him. This is it, said Hagrid, coming to a halt. The Leaky Cauldron. It's a famous place. It was a tiny, grubby-looking pub. If Hagrid hadn't pointed it out, Harry wouldn't have noticed it there. The people hurrying by it didn't glance at it. Their eyes slid from the big bookshop on the one side to the record shop on the other, as if they couldn't see the leaky cauldron at all. In fact, Harry had the most peculiar feeling that only he and Hagrid could see it. Before he could mention this, Hagrid had steered him inside. For a famous place, it was very dark and shabby. A few old women were in the corner drinking tiny glasses of sherry. One of them was smoking a long pipe. A little man in a top hat was talking to the old bard man, who was quite bald and looked like a gummy walnut. The low buzz of chatter stopped when they walked in. Everyone seemed to know Hagrid. They waved and smiled at him. The barman reached for a glass, saying, "The usual, Hagrid?" "Can't, Tom. I'm on official Hogwarts business," said Hagrid, clapping his great hand on Harry's shoulder and making Harry's knees buckle. "Good Lord," said the barman, peering at Harry. Can this be?" The leaky cauldron had suddenly gone completely still and silent. "Bless my soul," whispered the old barman. "Haryy Potter! What an honor!" He hurried out from behind the bar and rushed toward Harry and seized his hand, tears in his eyes. "Welcome back, Mr. Potter. Welcome back." Harry didn't know what to say. Everyone was looking at him. The old woman with the pipe was puffing on it without realizing it had gone out. Hagrid was beaming. Harry didn't know what to say. Everyone was looking at him. Then there was a great scraping of chairs, and the next moment Harry found himself shaking hands with everyone in the leaky cauldron. "Doris Cockford, Mr. Potter, can't believe I'm meeting you at last." "So proud, Mr. Potter, just so proud. Always wanted to shake your hand. I'm all aflutter." "Delighted, Mr. Potter, just can't tell you. Diggle's the name, Daedalus Diggle." "I've seen you before," said Harry as Daedalus Diggle's top hat fell off in his excitement. "You bowed to me once in a shop." "He remembers," cried Daedalus Diggle. Looks around at everyone. "Did you hear that? He remembers me." Harry shook hands again and again. Doris Crockford kept coming back for more. A pale young man made his way forward, very nervously. One of his teachers, his eyes were twitching. "Professor Quirrell," said Hagrid. "Harry, Professor Quirrell. He will be one of your teachers at Hogwarts." "Potter," stammered Professor Quirrell, grasping Harry's hand. Can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you." "What sort of magic do you teach, Professor Quirrell?" Defense against the dark arts," muttered Professor Quirrell, as though he'd rather not think about it. Not that you need it, eh, Potter?" He laughed nervously. You'll be getting all your equipment, I suppose. I've got to pick up a new book on vampires myself." He looked terrified at the very thought. But the others wouldn't let Professor Quirrell keep Harry to himself. It took almost 10 minutes to get away from them all. At last, Hagrid managed to make himself heard over the babble. "Must get along. Lots to buy. Come on, Harry." Doris Crockford shook Harry's hand one last time, and Hagrid led them through the bar and out into a small walled courtyard where there was nothing but a dustbin and a few weeds. Hagrid grinned at Harry. "Told you, didn't I? Told you were famous. Even Professor Quirrell was trembling to meet you. Mind you, he's usually trembling." "Is he always that nervous?" "Yeah, poor bloke. Brilliant mind. He was fine when he was studying out of books, but then he took a year off to get some first-hand experience. They say he met vampires in the Black Forest, and there was a nasty bit of trouble with the hag. Never been the same since. Scared of the students, scared of his own subject. Now, where's my umbrella? Vampires? Hags? Harry's head was swimming. Hagrid, meanwhile, was counting bricks in the wall above the dustbin. 2 up, 3 up, 2 across. Right, stand back, Harry. He tapped the wall 3 times at the point of his umbrella. The brick he touched quivered. It wiggled in the middle. A small hole appeared, and it grew wider and wider. A second later, they were facing an archway large enough for even Hagrid, an archway to a cobbled street which twisted and turned out of sight. Welcome, said Hagrid, to Diagon Alley. He grinned at Harry's amazement. They stepped through the archway. Can everybody hear the music right now? I can hear the music. Harry looked quickly over his shoulder and saw the archway shrink instantly back into solid wall. The sun shone brightly above on a stack of cauldrons outside the nearest shop. Cauldrons, all sizes, copper, brass, pewter, silver, self-stirring, collapsible, said a sign hanging above them. You'll be needing one, said Hagrid, but we gotta get your money first. Harry wished he'd had about 8 more eyes. He turned his head in every direction as they walked up the street, trying to look at everything at once. The shops, the things outside them, the people doing their shopping. A plump woman outside an apothecary, one of my favorite words, was shaking her head as they passed, saying, dragon liver, 16 shekels an ounce. They're mad. A soft, low hooting came from the dark shop, with the sign saying Elop's Owl Emporium, Tawny, Screech, Barn, Brown, and Snowy. Several boys about Harry's age had their noses pressed against a window with broomsticks in it. Look, Harry heard one of them say, the new Nimbus 2000, fast as ever. There were shops selling robes, shops selling telescopes, and strange silver instruments. Harry had never seen them before. Windows stacked with barrels of bat spleens and eel's eyes, and tottering piles of spell books and quills and rolls of parchment and potion bottles, globes of the moon. Gringotts, said Hagrid. They had reached a snowy white building which towered over the other little shops. Standing beside its burnished stone bronze stores, wearing a uniform in scarlet and gold was... And look at this. I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to try. This is part of it. Maybe you can see it. And it opens up. It very much does. As much as you can see it. It's not really a light book. Yeah. Oh, I've got to close it up proper. Okay. Did I close it up again? Is it that way? Oh, okay. There it is, finally. Yeah, that's a goblin, said Hagrid quietly as they walked up the white stone steps. The goblin was a head shorter than Harry. He had a swarthy, clever face, a pointed beard, and Harry noticed very long fingers and feet. He bowed as they walked inside. Now they were facing a second pair of doors, silver this time, with words engraved on them. Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. For those who take but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn. So if you seek beneath our floors a treasure that was never yours, thief, you have been warned, beware of finding more than treasure there. Like I said, You'd be mad to try and rob it, said Hagrid. A pair of goblins bowed to them through the silver doors, and they were in a vast marble hall. About 100 more goblins were sitting on high stools behind a long counter, scribbling in large ledgers, weighing coins on brass scales, examining precious stones through eyeglasses. And there were too many doors to count, leading off the hall, and yet more goblins were showing people in and out of these. Hagrid and Harry made for the counter. "Morning," said Hagrid to a free goblin. "We've come to take some money out of Mr. Haryy Potter's safe." "You have his key, sir?" "Got it here somewhere," said Hagrid as he turned and started emptying his pockets on the counter, scattering a handful of moldy dog biscuits over the goblin's book of numbers. The goblin wrinkled his nose. Harry watched the goblin on the right weighing a pile of rubies as big as glowing coals. "Got it," said Hagrid at last, holding up the tiny golden key. The goblin looked at it closely. "That seems to be in order." "And I've also got a letter here from Professor Dumbledore," said Hagrid importantly, throwing out his chest. "It's about you-know-what. In vault 713. The goblin read the letter carefully. "Very well," he said, handing it to Hagrid. I will get someone to take you down to both vaults. Griphook." Griphook was yet another goblin. Once Hagrid had crammed all the dog biscuits back inside his pockets, he and Harry followed Griphook towards one of the doors leading off the hall. "What's the you-know-what in vault 713? Harry asked. "Can't tell you that," said Hagrid mysteriously. "Very secret. Hogwarts business. Dumbledore trusted me. More'n my job's worth to tell you that." Griphook held the door open for them. Harry, who had expected more marble, was surprised. There were narrow stone passageway lit with flaming torches. It sloped deeply downwards, and there were little railway tracks on the floor. Griphook whistled, and a small cart came hurtling up the tracks toward them. They climbed in, Hagrid with some difficulty, and were off. At first, they just hurtled through a maze of twisting passages. Harry tried to remember left, right, left, middle fork, right, left, but it was impossible. The rattling cart seemed to know its own way because Griphook wasn't steering. Oh, here we go. There you go. That's interesting. So let's look at the next picture so I remember. That's the next picture. Isn't it cool? I thought it was very cool. Harry's eyes stung as the cold air rushed past them, but he kept them wide open. Once he thought he saw a burst of fire at the end of a passage and twisted around to see if it was a dragon, but too late. They plunged even deeper, passing an underground lake where huge stalactites and stalagmites grew from the ceiling and the floor. "I never know," Harry called to Hagrid over the noise of the cart. "What's the difference between a stalagmite and a stalactite?" "Stalagmite got an M in it," said Hagrid. "And don't ask me questions just now. I think I'm going to be sick." He did look very green, and the cart stopped at last beside a small door in the passage wall. Hagrid got out and had to lean against the wall to stop his knees a-trembling. Griphook unlocked the door. A lot of green smoke came billowing out, and as it was cleared, Harry gasped. Inside were mounds of gold coins, columns of silver, and heaps of little bronze nuts. "All yours," smiled Hagrid. "All Harry's? It was incredible. The Dursleys couldn't have known about this, or they would have had it from him faster than blinking." How often had they complained how much Harry cost them to keep? And all the time, there had been a small fortune belonging to him, buried deep under London. That's what I mean, you know. Sometimes we don't see it, but maybe it's right there. Maybe we will when the time is good, when the time is right. Hagrid helped Harry pile some of it into a bag. The gold ones are galleons, he explained. I love that word, galleon. 17 silver sickles to a galleon and 29 nuts to a sickle. It's easy enough, right? That should be enough for a couple of terms. We'll keep the rest safe for you. He turned to Griphook. Vault 713 now, please. And can we go more slowly? One speed only, said Griphook. They were going even deeper now and gathering speed. The air became colder and colder as they hurtled down tight corners. They went rattling over an underground ravine, and Harry leaned over the side to try and see what was down in the dark bottom, but Hagrid groaned and pulled him back by the scruff of the neck. Vault 713 had no keyhole. You guys remember this from the movie? Very good. Stand back, said Griphook importantly. He stroked the door gently with one of his long fingers and it simply melted away. If anyone but a Gringotts goblin tried that, they'd be sucked through the door and trapped in there, said Griphook. How often do you check to see if anyone's inside? Harry asked. About once every 10 years, said Griphook with a rather nasty grin. Something really extraordinary had to be inside this top security vault, Harry was sure, and he leaned forward eagerly, expecting to see fabulous jewels at the very least, but first he thought it was empty. Then he noticed a grubby little package wrapped in brown paper laying on the floor. Hagrid picked it up and tucked it deep inside his coat. Harry longed to know what it was, but he knew better than to ask. I bet you know what it is, though. Come on back in this infernal cart and don't talk to me on the way back. It's best if I keep my mouth shut, said Hagrid. One wild cart later, they stood blinking in the sunlight outside of Gringotts. Harry didn't know where to run now. He had a big bag full of money. He didn't have to know how many galleons they were to a pound to know that he was holding more money than he'd ever had in his whole life. More money than Dudley had ever had. Might as well get your uniform, said Hagrid, nodding towards the Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. Listen, Harry, would you mind if I slipped off for a pick-me-up in the leaky cauldron? I hate them Gringotts carts. He did look a bit sick, so Harry entered Madame Malcolm's shop alone, feeling nervous. Madame Malcolm was a squat, smiling witch dressed all in mauve. Hogwarts, dear? She said when Harry started to speak. Got the lot here. Another young man just being fitted right now, in fact. In the back of the shop, a boy with a pale, pointed face was standing on a footstool, while the second witch pinned up his long black robes. Madame Malcolm stood Harry on a stool next to him, slipped a long robe over his head, and began to pin it to the right life. Hello, said the boy. Hogwarts, too? Yes, said Harry. My father's next door buying my books, and mother's up the street looking at wands, said the boy. He had a bored, drawing face. Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one and smuggle it in somehow. Harry was strongly reminded of Dudley. Have you got your own broom? The boy went on. No, said Harry. Play Quidditch, all? Quidditch? No, said Harry, wondering what on earth Quidditch could be. I do. Father says it's a crime if I'm not picked to play for my house, and I must say I agree. Know what house you'll be in yet? No, Harry said, feeling more stupid by the minute. Well, no one really knows until they get there, do they? But I know I'll be in Slytherin. All my family has been. Imagine being in Hufflepuff. I think I'd leave, wouldn't you? Harry said, wishing he could say more interesting things. I say, look at that man, said the boy suddenly, nodding toward the front window. Hagrid was there, grinning at Harry and pointing at 2 large ice creams to show he couldn't come in. That's Hagrid, said Harry, pleased to know something the boy didn't. He works at Hogwarts. Oh, said the boy, I've heard of him. He's sort of a servant, isn't he? He's the gameskeeper, said Harry. He was liking the boy less and less every second. Yes, exactly. I've heard he's sort of a savage. He lives in a hut in the school grounds, and every now and then he gets drunk and tries to do magic, like ends up setting fire to his bed. I think he's brilliant, said Harry coldly. Do you? Said the boy with a slight sneer. Why is he with you? Where are your parents? They're dead, said Harry shortly. He didn't much feel like going into the matter with the boy. Oh, sorry, said the other, not sounding sorry at all, but were they our kind, were they? They were a witch and a wizard, if that's what you mean. I really don't think they should let the other sort in, do you? They're just not the same, and they've never been brought up to know our ways. Some of them have never even heard of Hogwarts until they get their letters. I imagine. I think they should keep it in the old wizarding families. What's your surname, anyway? But before Harry could answer, Madam Malkin said, That's you done, my dear. Said Harry, not sorry for an excuse to stop talking to the boy and hop down from the footstool. Well, I'll see you at Hogwarts, I suppose, said the drawling boy. Harry was rather quiet as they ate ice creams that Hagrid had brought him, chocolate and raspberry with chopped nuts. What's everybody's favorite ice cream? Mine is banana fudge. I very much like it. And eggnog. What's up? Said Hagrid. Nothing. Harry lied. They stopped to buy parchment and quills. Harry cheered up a bit when he found a bottle of ink that changed color as you wrote. When they left the shop, he said, Hagrid, what's Quidditch? Blimey, Harry, I keep forgetting how little you know, not knowing about Quidditch. Don't make me feel worse, said Harry. He told Hagrid about the pale boy and Madame Malkin's, and he said people from Muggle families shouldn't even be allowed in. You're not from a Muggle family. If he had known you were, he'd grown up knowing your name. If his parents were wizarding folk, you saw him in the leaky cauldron. Anyway, what does he know about it? Some of the best I ever saw were the only ones with magic in them. A long line of Muggles. Look at your mom. Look what she had for a sister. Like my family. So, what is Quidditch? It's our sport. Wizard sport. It's like football in the Muggle world. Everyone follows Quidditch, played up in the air on broomsticks, and there's 4 balls. Sort of hard to explain the rules. And what are Slytherin and Hufflepuff? Schoolhouses, there's 4. Everyone says Hufflepuff are a lot of duffers, but I bet I'm in Hufflepuff, Harry said gloomily. Better Hufflepuff than Slytherin, said Hagrid darkly. There wasn't a single witch or wizard that went bad that wasn't in Slytherin. You know who was one. Sorry. You know who was at Hogwarts? Years and years ago, said Hagrid. They bought Harry's school books in a shop called Flourish and Boss. I want to go there so bad. I do. Where the shelves were stacked to the ceiling with books as large as paving stones bound in leather, books the size of postage stamps and covers of silk, books full of particular and peculiar symbols, and a few books with nothing in them at all. Even Dudley, who never read anything, would have been wild to get his hands on some of these. Hagrid almost had to drag Harry away. From curses and counter curses, Bewitch your friends and befuddle your enemies with the latest revenges. Hair loss, jelly legs, tongue tying, and much, much more. By Professor Vindictus Verderian. I was trying to find out how to curse Dudley. I'm not saying that's not a good idea, but you're not allowed to use magic in the Muggle world. Expectly in very special circumstances, said Hagrid. And anyway, you couldn't work any of them curses yet. You'll need a lot more study before you get to that level. Hagrid wouldn't let Harry buy a solid gold cauldron either. It says pewter on your list. But they got a nice set of scales for the weighing portion ingredients and a collapsible brass telescope. Then they visited the apothecary, which had fascinating enough to make it up for its horrible smell. Bad eggs and rotten cabbages. Oh, look at this. How extraordinary is that? Makes me feel like it's the 70s. Barrels of slimy stuff stood on the floor, and jars of herbs and dried roots and bright powders. We're almost done. All lined the walls. Bundles of feathers, strings of fangs, snarled claws. They all hung from the ceiling. Well, Hagrid asked the man behind the counter for a supply of some basic potion ingredients for Harry. Harry himself examined silver unicorn horns at 21 galleons each, and minuscule, glittery black beetle eyes. 5 nets a scoop. Outside the apothecary, Hagrid checked Harry's list again. Just your wand left. Oh, yeah. I still haven't gotten your birthday present. Harry felt himself go red. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. Tell you what, I'll get you an animal. Not a toad. Toads went out of fashion. Fashion. There's an echo. Yeah, I'd be laughed at. And I don't like cats. They make me sneeze. I'll get you an owl. All the kids want owls. They're dead useful. You carry your post and everything. 20 minutes later, they left the owl emporium, which had been dark and full of rustling and flickering jewel-bright eyes. Harry now carried a large cage, which held a beautiful snowy owl, fast asleep under her head and her wing. He couldn't stop stammering his thanks, sounding just like Professor Quirrell. Don't mention it, said Hagrid gruffly. Don't you expect a lot of presents from them Dursleys? Just Ollivanders left now. Only place for wands. Ollivanders, and you gotta have the best wand. A magic wand. That was what Harry had really been looking forward to. The last shop was narrow and shabby. Peeling gold letters over the door read, and let me see if I can do it this way. Ollivanders, makers of fine wands since 382 BC. Oh, I love that. I love that scene in the movie, too. So glorious. A single wand lay on a faded purple cushion in the dusty window. A tinkling bell rang out somewhere in the depths of the shop as they stepped inside. It was a tiny place, except for a single spindly chair, which Hagrid sat on to wait. Harry felt strangely as though he'd entered a very strict library. He swallowed a lot of new questions that just occurred to him and looked instead at the thousands of narrow boxes piled neatly right up to the ceiling. For some reason, the back of his neck prickled. The very dust and silence in here seemed to tingle with some secret magic. Good afternoon, said a soft voice. Harry jumped. Hagrid must have jumped too, because there was a loud crashing noise, and he got quickly off the spindling chair. An old man was standing before them, his wide pale eyes shining like moons through the gloom of the shop. Hello, said Harry awkwardly. Ah, yes, said the man. Yes, I thought I'd be seeing you soon. Harry Potter. It wasn't a question. You have your mother's eyes. It seemed only yesterday she was in here herself buying her first wand. 10 1/4 inches long, swishy, made of willow. Nice wand for charm work. Mr. Ollivander moved towards Harry. Harry wished he would blink. Those silvery eyes were creepy. Your father, on the other hand, well, he favored a mahogany wand, 11 inches, pliable, a little more power, and excellent for transfiguration. Well, I say your father favored it. It's really the wand that chooses the wizard, of course. Mr. Ollivander had come so close that he and Harry were almost nose to nose. Harry could see himself reflected in those misty eyes. And that's where Mr. Ollivander touched the lightning scar on Harry's forehead with the long white finger. I'm sorry to say I sold the wand that did it, he said softly. 13 1/2 inches. Yes, powerful wand, very powerful, and in the wrong hands. Well, if I'd known what the wand was going out into the world to do. He shook his head, and then, to Harry's relief, spotted Hagrid. Rubeus! Rubeus! Hagrid, how nice to see you again. Oh, 16 inches, rather bendy, wasn't it? It was, sir, yes, said Hagrid. Good wand, that one. But I suppose they snapped it in half when you got expelled, said Ollivander, suddenly stern. Yes, they did, said Hagrid, shuffling his feet. I still got the pieces, though, he said brightly. But you don't use them? Said Mr. Ollivander sharply. No, sir, said Hagrid quickly. Harry noticed he gripped his pink umbrella tightly as he spoke. Said Mr. Ollivander, giving Hagrid a piercing look. Well now, Mr. Potter, let me see. He pulled the long tape measure with silver markings out of his pocket. Which is your wand arm? I'm right-handed, said Harry. Hold out your arm. That's it. He measured Harry from shoulder to finger, then wrist to elbow, shoulder to floor, knee to armpit, and round the head. He measured and he said, every Ollivander wand has a core of powerful magical substance, Mr. Potter. We use unicorn hair, phoenix tail feathers, and the heartstrings of dragons. No two Ollivander wands are the same. Just as no two unicorns, dragons, or phoenixes are quite the same. I love phoenixes. It's such a powerful metaphysical symbol. And a good metaphor. And of course, you'll never get such good results with another wizard's wand. Harry suddenly realized that the tape measure was measuring between his nostrils, was doing this on its own. Mr. Ollivander was flitting around the shelves, taking down boxes. That'll do, he said, and the tape measure crumpled into a heap on the floor. Right then, Mr. Potter, try this one. Beechwood and dragon heartstring, 9 inches, nice and flexible. Just take it and give it a wave. Harry took the wand, feeling foolish, waved it around once, but Mr. Ollivander snatched it out of his hand almost at once. Maple and phoenix feather, 7 inches, quite whippy. Try. Harry tried, but he again heartily raised the wand when it too was snatched back by Mr. Ollivander. No, here, ebony and unicorn hair, 8 1/2 inches. Springy. Go on, then try it out. Harry tried and tried. He had no idea what Mr. Ollivander was waiting for. The pile of tried wands was mounting higher and higher on the spindly chair. But the more wands Mr. Ollivander pulled from the shelves, the happier he seemed to become. Tricky customer, eh? Not to worry. We'll find the perfect match here somewhere. I wonder. Now, why not? Unusual combination. Holly and phoenix feathers, 11 inches, nice and supple. Harry took the wand. He felt a sudden warmth in his fingers. He raised the wand above his head, brought it swishing down. through dusty air, and a stream of red and gold sparks shot out from the end like a firework, throwing dancing spots of light to the walls. Hagrid whooped and clapped, and Mr. Ollivander cried, "Oh, bravo! Yes, indeed! Oh, very good! Well, well, well! How curious! How very curious!" He put Harry's wand back in his box and wrapped it in brown paper, still muttering, "Curious! Curious!" "Sorry," said Harry, "but what's curious?" Mr. Ollivander fixed Harry with his pale stare. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand gave another feather. Just one other. It's very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar." Harry swallowed. "Yes, 13.5 inches. You! Curious indeed how these things happen. The wand chooses the wizard, remember. I think we must expect great things from you, Mr. Potter. After all, he who must not be named did great things. Terrible, yes, but great." Harry shivered. He wasn't sure he liked Mr. Ollivander too much. He paid 7 golden galleons for his wand, and Mr. Ollivander bowed them from his shop. The late afternoon sun hung low in the sky as Harry and Hagrid made their way back through down Diagon Alley, back through the wall, back through the leaky cauldron, now empty. Harry didn't speak at all as they walked down the road. He didn't even notice how much people were gawking at them on the underground, laden as they were with all their funny-shaped packages, and with the sleepy, snowing owl on Harry's lap. Up another escalator, back to Paddington Station. Harry only realized where they were when Hagrid tapped him on the shoulder. "Got time for a bite to eat before your train leaves," he says. He bought Harry a hamburger, and they sat down on plastic seats to eat them. Harry kept looking around. Everything looked so strange somehow. "You all right, Harry? You're very quiet," said Hagrid. Harry wasn't sure he could explain. He just had the best birthday of his life. And yet, he chewed his hamburger, trying to find the words. "Everyone thinks I'm special," he said at last. "I know the feeling. All those people in the leaky cauldron, Professor Quirrell, Mr. Ollivander, but I don't know anything about magic at all. How can they expect great things? I'm famous and I can't even remember what I'm famous for. I don't know what happened when Sorry, I mean the night my parents died." Hagrid leaned across the table. Besides the wild beard and eyebrows, he wore a very kind smile. "Don't you worry, Harry. You'll learn fast enough. Everyone starts at the beginning at Hogwarts. You'll be just fine. Just be yourself. I know it's hard. You've been singled out, and that's always hard. But you'll have a great time at Hogwarts. I did. I still do, as a matter of fact." Hagrid helped Harry onto the train that would take him back to the Dursleys. So this is a little bit different, right, in the book than the movie. He now has to wait until he has to go. He's not there yet because it's not September 1st. Then handed him an envelope. "Your ticket for Hogwarts," he said. "1st of September, King's Cross. It's all on your ticket. Any problems with them Dursleys, you send me a letter with your owl. She'll know where to find me. See you soon, Harry." The train pulled out of the station. Harry wanted to watch Hagrid until he was out of sight. He rose in his seat and pressed his nose against the window. But he blinked and Hagrid had gone. And look, that's his ticket. It's a different looking ticket. It's a different looking ticket for sure. And that, everybody, was the chapter, was part of the story of Harry Potter as he went to Diagon Alley. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. And this Cerebral Book Chat Junior Edition.